UFC Fight Night Oliveira versus Gamrot is coming up next weekend, and today, guys, I have the full card breakdown with timestamps if you'd like to skip to any part of the video. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with many YouTube channels. Guys, we're going to be talking about these fights and breaking them down as deep as we can possibly get into each matchup. We have odds on the table right now. I'm recording this video very early, depending on when you are actually viewing this, whether it's after UFC 320. A lot of people do view this after the fights, like in the week to come up with the brand new cards over here. So as of right now, we have odds available for most of the fights, but not all of the fights. But we're going to be giving our breakdowns, predictions, and again, timestamps will be there if you'd like to skip to any part of the video. Thank you so much for being here. Let's get started with the early prelim opener. And kicking off the card today, we have Saimon Oliveira taking on Luan Lacerda. There's a few fights over here where the breakdowns are unfortunately going to get a little bit more simple, and this is one of those fights over here. So we'll start by breaking down Saimon Oliveira first, who is a BJJ fighter, but unfortunately subpar striker, whose game plan when he gets into the octagon is to always get fights to the ground and find a submission. And like I was just saying, there isn't too much else to say about Saimon over here. He's been unsuccessful for years now. He's been incredibly inactive, and now he's exiting his prime. There unfortunately doesn't seem to be too much hope for him inside the octagon. It's just the state of his career so far. But Luan Lacerda, on the other hand, he is also a grappler with subpar hands, but in those hands, he does have power in those hands. On the ground, he actually is a very real threat, always looking for a submission. And when you're on the ground with him, his opponents always have to worry at like pretty well every exchange on that mat. He's also been winless and inactive in the UFC since joining, and it's important to note with both of these fighters, I have no idea why either fighter hasn't been fighting, but what can you do? Luan, at least compared to Saimon Oliveira, has taken on better opponents in Damon Blackshear and Cody Stamann. Cody Stamann is an okay loss. He's always a tough outing, but if you've been following the channel, you would know just how highly I respect the skills of Damon Blackshear. And while it lasted, he was doing okay in there, but it really is like the extent of his success so far inside the UFC. So when I'm breaking down these two fighters, to be honest with you guys, you have two winless fighters, unfortunately, but there's one fighter that I look at and I go, okay, I sense a little bit of danger in this guy's ability, and that is on the side of Luan Lacerda. So for this bout, I'm going to pick Luan Lacerda to get the job done. I'm not extremely confident in saying so. He's also the younger guy. I know both guys are like kind of still in their prime. Saimon Oliveira exiting his prime. I got Luan Lacerda to get the job done over here. I can't really trust Saimon Oliveira to win a bout in 2025, or the big 2025, some people should say now. But now, guys, let's continue on up the card to a little bit more of a fun fight over here. We have Valter Walker taking on Mohammed Usman. This is very good matchmaking by the UFC. Dude, whoever's been doing the matchmaking by the UFC lately, for like the past, like, I want to say, you know what? We can say like the entire year, man. They've been doing very, very well. We'll start by breaking down Valter Walker over here. Now, Valter Walker is a very strong heavyweight with pretty good wrestling and really good BJJ, particularly, as we all know, leg locks. Historically, he has showed us that he also, unfortunately, has less than a round's worth of cardio, and we don't know if he's changed it all that much. He's been showing up inside the octagon in much better shape, but again, we don't know if he's actually fixed up that cardio issue. After losing to Lucas Bresky in his UFC debut, he has been on a roll with leg lock submissions, getting wins over Junior Tafa, which says nothing, Dontel Mays, which also kind of says nothing, but then he came out against Kennedy Nzechukwu and went guns blazing right away, seemingly rocking Kennedy Nzechukwu and finding a really clean leg lock. We haven't seen a heavyweight in a long time with a threat like this in his arsenal, and he's looking to continue that momentum here against Mohammed Usman. The dude isn't even in his prime yet. It looks like he's a little bit older than he is, and I forgot to mention he's Johnny Walker's brother for those who don't know, because I'm about to mention with Mohammed Usman, he is the brother of Kamaru Usman. Always fun with those types of matchups. Mohammed Usman is a football player transitioning over to MMA. He's a decent striker who stays on the outside typically, but he can wrestle inside the octagon. He doesn't have good striking defense, but he's really strong and he has really good takedown defense. But the takedown defense itself isn't perfect. His cardio is decent as well. There's definitely just room for improvement. Another thing that I want to mention about Mohammed Usman is that he has Rashad Evans in his corner, and Rashad gives fantastic advice. He tries to apply exactly what Rashad tells him to do in the following rounds, and I love when fighters do that. And it's not something, like, I always find it sad when it's something I sit down and I mention, like, hey, this fighter listens to his corner. That should be, like, the baseline for every single fighter. So, hey, you know what? Mohammed Usman listens to his corner, and specifically Rashad Evans, does give him good advice inside that octagon. It's one of the reasons why he ended up winning his last fight. But anyways, speaking of his last fight, he just broke his recent two-fight skid, against Hamdi Abdel Wahab, I always pronounce that name wrong, where after struggling in the first round, he ended up bagging the next 2 rounds. Prior to that, honestly, even in his wins, he's never really like shown up and shown anything all that impressive. He's in shape, which is important for the heavyweight division. You can get by on that alone, but Valter Walker also comes out here, and Valter Walker has been showing up in better shape. So again, this is pretty good matchmaking by the UFC, and it's tough because I still don't want to sit down and I don't want to confidently say like a guy like Valter Walker is going to get the job done, because I still do worry about that cardio issue that he had. Again, he's been finishing his fights very quickly. Has he fixed that issue? We don't know. Is this going to get out of the first round? Valter Walker hasn't let that happen recently. Mohammed Usman's strong. He has good takedown defense. He's probably going to be working on it. But I think I have to pick the guy who I actually see a big threat of danger from, that being Valter Walker. They're about the same weight. Valter Walker's a lot younger. It's just, again, Mohammed Usman's never shown up, and he's never wowed me inside that octagon. Valter Walker has wowed me at a heavyweight level, and beating Kenny Nzechukwu in the way that he beat him, I think it says something. I know that Kennedy hasn't historically always been a heavyweight, but he's a much better fighter than all of the guys that Valter Walker and Mohammed Usman has taken on. I'm going to go with Valter Walker. I'm fairly confident in saying that. I just see him getting another takedown and see him getting another leg lock. Let's see what the odds are over here over on Odds Gym. Mohammed Usman sitting at the average odds of plus 203 to Valter Walker minus 256. I think that's fair. I don't really like Mohammed Usman as an underdog opportunity. I definitely like Valter Walker, but I'm not confident enough to bet on this fight on the side of Valter Walker. But he's going to be my pick. And now, guys, let's continue on up the card over here to Jafel Filho taking on Clayton Carpenter. Another really, really fun matchup by the UFC with these two. Two really fun prospects. It's been a little while since we've seen Jafel Filho. Oh, no, it's not. I forgot about the Alan Nascimento fight. Sorry about that. Yeah, I was just planning on talking about how he looked good in that fight. What was I saying? That's funny. I forgot that was just so recently, because I remember like when I break this down, I get an idea of like what I want to talk about for each fight over here, and I was like, yeah, you know what, Jafel Filho, he still had a good performance against Al Nascimento. Forgot about that completely. All right, let's break these fighters down. Okay, we'll start with Jafel Filho over here. Jafel Filho is a high-level grappler with underrated power when he's on the feet striking with you. He's okay technical-wise, but he can get carried away. He does have good power, as I just mentioned, and he's pretty good at clubbing and subbing inside there. He also has great cardio. He also has amazing heart. He has great single legs, and on the ground, he has really nice transitions, and he is just all around a very dangerous fighter. Now, like we've been talking about with some fighters on this card, he's also been very inactive, and that's why I just talked about his Alan Nascimento performances, but when he is fun, he shows up. I would imagine this is just like the UFC maybe wanting to bring in some fighters to the Brazil card. I don't know if they have any like influence over there or anything where it's like, hey, we're going to get you and start fighting now. But anyways, Jafel Filho in the UFC, he's won some, he's lost some. He's had an insight fight with Daniel Perez, dominated Ode Osborne, and then had a very, very high level and close fight with Alan Nascimento. He's an underrated fighter in general, and in my opinion, the dude is still in his prime. He's been looking good. I just wish that we could see him more inside the octagon. And he's been more active right now, so we can hope for the best. Clayton Carpenter, on the other hand, he is a very experienced martial artist with great grappling, great pressure, heart, cardio, aggression. The guy has some really nice entries on his takedowns. He has nice ground and pound. He has nice submissions as well. If Clayton Carpenter somehow finds himself on his back, he also does a great job breaking his opponent's posture, never accepting any bad positions, and throwing slicing elbows from that bottom position. He's just very active in general, okay? After coming into the UFC and getting a couple wins, he just suffered his first loss to Tagir Ulanbekov, where in that fight, it was a close fight. It was a very good fight. It was a very, very hard back and forth fight. He showed he's better than good. He's a great fighter against a pretty good level of competition. He's in his prime. Hopefully we can see him bounce back with an improved win over here. And this is a difficult fight to pick, in my opinion. Oh, man, like, Jafel Filho, he's been fun. He's looked good. Both guys are coming off of a loss over here. It's a little bit tough, especially because I could see this fight kind of playing out on the feet. If you have two grapplers, sometimes they cancel each other out. I could see these two end up scrapping. Ooh. I'm going to reluctantly pick Clayton Carpenter. I think it's a close fight. I don't think it's one that you should be betting on, but I think Clayton Carpenter, I've just been a little bit more impressed with him. I like that. I feel like he's going to be a little bit more dangerous in certain situations than Jafel Filho, but Pastor's a good fighter too, man. This is going to be a good fight. It's going to be a fun fight. I cannot wait to watch that one. Let's see what the odds are over here on Odds Gem. And the odds kind of suggest what I was just saying. The odds are near a pick'em right now. Clayton Carpenter, minus 102 average odds favorite. Jafel Filho, minus 121 favorite. Yeah, that's a toughie. I wouldn't bet on this one. I don't mind a round line for this one because these two are very tough fighters. I'm interested to see where that one ends up coming about, but for the sake of the video, I'm going to pick Clayton Carpenter, but I'm like 55-45 on that one. All right, guys, let's continue on up the card over here to the banger of the night, that being the Russian Ronda, Irina Alekseeva, taking on UFC newcomer Beatriz Mesquita. I have a little bit to say about this fight, but not so much at the same time. You guys gotta just hear me out, okay? We'll start with Irina Alekseeva over here. Irina Alekseeva is a come-forward fighter who walks forward with sloppy hands. Now, although she is sloppy, she can at least try to scrap and fight. She tries her best to be dangerous, but at the end of the day, for the division, she's really not all that dangerous. She's decent on the ground if she is somehow able to drag the fight there, but there really is no technique that you see from her. She's 5-3 in the UFC, and guys, when I make these videos, I try not to be disrespectful, but while I say like she tries to come here and scrap, she's still garbage. She got beat up by one of the worst UFC fighters in Claudio Saigula. She's 35 years old now, and she's never, ever really shown anything impressive in the octagon, and I doubt that will continue even for a new UFC debuting fighter over here. It's difficult to talk, but again, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but there's not much else I could say, honestly, but Beatriz Mesquita, on the other hand, is an interesting one to break down, okay? We've seen some well-roundedness from her. She's an LFA fighter coming into the UFC. She's had some nice finishes both on the feet and on the ground, but she is definitely 100% primarily a grappler inside the octagon, and she does have skills there. Some of you might remember like that clip of her grappling Jennifer Maia and especially beating Miesha Tate in a grappling match, but that doesn't say much because it's Miesha Tate, but she does have skills on the ground. The reason why I'm hesitant here to say anything like concretely good about her is because of the level of competition that she's faced. She has faced competition that is like non-existent. She has finishes, she has looked good, but her wins mean like beyond nothing. And she's coming into this fight against Irina Alekseeva over here, who is also an opponent that means nothing. So we'll have to see and like gauge how good she actually is in MMA. We'll have to wait and see for her to take on like another opponent over here. But even in saying that, I'm still going to pick her to win. I'm not picking Irina Alekseeva to ever win a fight ever. I think she's horrible. Just classic UFC 135 bantamweight division level Irina Alekseeva. I'm picking Beatriz Mesquita just because Irina Alekseeva sucks. Unfortunately, we don't have any odds there, though, so that's going to be the story of that fight. My pick's going to be Beatriz Mesquita to get the job done. Maybe a submission. She's going to submit the Russian Ronda. Yeah, very dangerous. Let's continue on to another banger over here, guys, that being Julia Psycho Polastri taking on Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Now, I'm actually a little bit more interested to watch this fight, but still, it's like, we can continue on with some better fights over here. We'll start with Julia Polastri, and Julia Polastri is a high-output striker who will attack all parts of your body when she's striking. She does have BJJ credentials, but I personally think that she sucks on the ground. She throws very little technique, although somehow she does end up securing takedowns when she ends up, like, going for them. Also, I hate when fighters do this, guys. Sometimes when Julia Polastri is losing fights, instead of adjusting, she'll just, like, make faces after eating big shots. Everything a coach likes to see in their athlete, eh? Anyways, she's been inconsistent since joining the UFC, with her only decent performance being against Corey McKenna, which I feel like I've been saying this a lot, and apologies, guys, but it says nothing. Other than that, she lost to Lupita Godinez, where she got embarrassed on the ground, but she ended up getting pretty scrappy in the third, didn't look too bad there. And her bout against Josephine Knudsen wasn't good either. But hey, like, there's always room for improvement. She's fairly promotable, so the UFC will probably keep her around no matter how many fights she ends up losing, and she isn't even in her prime yet. Hopefully we can see some improvements on her end, like at least like in the Muay Thai skills, she has a little bit of hands there. She's capable of coming in and scrapping a little bit. It's just, she's been lackluster. Unlike Karolina Kowalkiewicz, on the other hand, who is a very slick striker for the division. Unfortunately with Karolina, though, she's starting to get old. She's very hittable. Her cardio and heart are still there, but she's almost 40 years old now, and she actually hasn't been doing too bad in recent times. Like, after everyone started, like, under the sun started counting her out, she ended up bouncing back and went on a pretty good win streak, as you can see on Tapology over here. As usual, though, the competition level could have been better, but she was showing up and she was looking pretty sharp. She was looking a little bit like an improved version of herself. Unfortunately, though, I'm still waiting, but not praying. Keep that in mind for her downfall. I've always kind of liked Karolina. I mentioned that because the signs are there. Things like how heavy she's breathing in bouts and how her speed in the punches have declined a little bit. She's slow. It's slow, but she isn't washed yet. I'm saying the day's approaching fast, okay? And now, like I said, she's almost 40. She's actually coming off of her 2 recent performances and her losses, though, against Usman Lucindo and Denise Gomez, where she unfortunately couldn't keep up with Usman Lucindo, but she didn't look good in that fight. But in her most recent fight, she actually got a little bit better each round that she was showing up against Denise Gomez and showing a little bit of her veteran experience in WMMA. She barely lost every round in that fight. Like, the point being, guys, she is still a very capable fighter within the UFC, even though that she is still old. She was always a good striker. She was counted out. She's coming back. I don't know if she ended up switching things up in her training a little bit, but she's been looking good. Here's the thing. Like I said, the day is coming where Karolina Kowalkiewicz is going to show up and we're going to go, yeah, this chick's washed, okay? It's not quite there yet, and I'm going to bank that it's still not there yet. I think that technique-wise, she is miles better than Julia Polastri. I think that she is a very capable fighter. If this is a young Karolina Kowalkiewicz, I would bet on her. I'd be that confident that she would get the job done against Julia. But like I said, even after like round 1 now with Karolina, she's breathing really, really, really heavy, and she's pushing through. But the day's going to come where she's going to show up, and the day's going to come in very, very soon that she's going to show up not looking so good. I like a round line for this one. I'd be surprised if either fighter finished each other, but I'm going to pick Karolina Kowalkiewicz still, because again, I still think that she's just the better fighter. But then again, you know what, I keep meaning to make a video of like my weird things that I take into consideration when I'm betting on fights, and one of them is the more promotable girl fighter will probably lose, and that's Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Yeah. So that's going against that, but at the end of the day, she actually does have skill sets. I know Julia has a little bit of hands, but that's about it. I'm going to pick Karolina. Another low confidence pick for me. Let's see what the odds are over here, okay? Karolina's the underdog. Julia Polastri is a big favorite over here. She should not be that big of a favorite, I'm sorry. Karolina's absolutely an underdog opportunity over here, but I'm not going to be throwing money on that fight. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't shock me if Julia Polastri did the job, but I'm picking Karolina. I hope she wins too. I always kind of liked her. Now, guys, let's get into another little bit of a better fight over here. That being Vitor Petrino taking on Thomas the Train Peterson. I'm interested to see how this one's going to go, guys. Let's break down Vitor Petrino first over here, okay? Vitor Petrino is a good striker with really good power. He has well-timed counters, and he has good technique on the feet in general. Now, as we all know, Vitor Petrino recently moved up to heavyweight, and his first fight was unfortunately a little too quick to tell anything. He took on Austin Lane and just got a very quick submission. Usually, the lighter man's skill is a very real thing, and that's something that we need to take into consideration about, especially if you are a betting man when like analyzing these cards for, you know, to profit. But I personally always like to wait and see before saying anything concrete about that lighter man's skill. And what we saw was not enough. He took on somebody at heavyweight who sucked, and the fight just ended before the fight really began. We didn't really get to see anything. While physically, he did seem to fit into the heavyweight division nicely, this still will be a good test for Vitor, okay? Other than that, Vitor actually hasn't been living up to his hype. A lot of people were hyped up on this guy, even losing a bout to Anthony Smith, and that says a lot. Other than that, he got knocked out after that by Dustin Jacoby, which that isn't a bad loss to have, but he's reinventing himself here over at heavyweight, and I would imagine that he'll perform much better there. Tapology here says that he weighed in his last, I'm assuming this is his last fight at 250 pounds, so that's good for heavyweight. He's just entered his prime as well, and there's a lot of potential in the career for Vitor Petrino. I think that he can actually make a run at heavyweight, especially with room for improvement. But let's talk about Thomas the Train Peterson over here. Thomas Peterson, he is the former LFA heavyweight champion. If you guys follow the channel, you might know I'm a big fan of LFA. Very underrated fights over there. But he's a strong wrestler with poor hands. When on the ground, though, he has proven to be some pretty good trouble for his opponents. He's heavy, he has a lot of strength, he has really good ground and pound, and he has good control when he's on the ground. He also leads with his head a lot in bouts, so clash of heads can happen and damage the opponents, perhaps like stealing rounds because of it. Like, don't be surprised that Thomas Peterson, this guy comes forward crashing like a train. You can do some serious damage to your opponents like that, and the ref, they won't call anything. It's like, oh, unfortunate that headbutt happened. Thomas Peterson can cause headbutts. I always kind of wonder if he does that on purpose sometimes, but talking about his record, he has had a disappointing UFC run so far, winning one, losing one over again, and this is why, again, I have been loving the UFC matchmaking recently, guys, because it's a good fight to make with these two. They're both in the same kind of state of their career, but for his performances, for Thomas Peterson, getting a little off track, there isn't much to note. He's won, he's looked sloppy here and there, he's been knocked out. His only clean win was his most recent fight against Dontel Mays, where He ended up getting a takedown early each round, and he made the most of them each round. He was looking great with the submission attempts. He was looking great with the ground and pound in that fight. Maybe he can keep that momentum going because, I mean, like, that is the best that he's looked in a long time, but history dictates otherwise for him. History dictates that he's due for a loss over here. He's huge. He's in his prime, and he has the toughest test yet in the division, in my opinion, in that he is taken on yet even, like, outside of the UFC too. Obviously, Vitor Petrino is a very, very difficult and promising heavyweight prospect over here, okay? So when I look at these two, are they even going to weigh the same? Thomas Peterson, like, just from memory, I feel like he weighs more than 250, but hey, I'm going to go by what Tapology says over here. I'm going to pick the guy who was in the lighter weight division. I understand, like, when we talk about the lighter man skill coming into the UFC, for light heavyweight and heavyweight, like, you don't take that as much into consideration as any other division, but Vitor is showing up heavy, stocky. He's very in shape. He filled into the division nice. He's going to be faster. I would imagine, I'm going to pick him, like, kind of solely on that. He's looked way more impressive on the feet, too. He could get taken down. Thomas Peterson could lay on him. But there's much more room for improvement for Vitor Petrino. And like I said, when it comes to heavyweight, sometimes you just got to pick the guy in better shape. So I'm going to pick Vitor Petrino to get the job done over here. This is interesting because I'm still worried about how he's going to show up at heavyweight. He could get rocked and knocked out too. These are like huge power hitters that he's fighting. My gut's telling me to throw some money on this one. But hey, we'll see what happens. I'm excited for this fight. I think it's a good fight. I think it's a good test for Vitor Petrino and good matchmaking by the UFC. My pick's going to be Vitor Petrino. Pretty confident in saying so. All right, guys, let's keep going up the card over here to a fight that's actually a little bit more simple to break down than some of the fights, and you'll get why in Lucas Rocha versus Stuart Nickel, and we'll get right into it, okay? Lucas Rocha, he's a very powerful fighter who does a good job utilizing knees and punt along with his punches. Good striking game, throwing all kinds of fun strikes as well. While Lucas Rocha does have a decent skill set, he can be taken down inside the octagon. After looking good inside the UFC, he just lost, or excuse me, outside of the UFC, he just lost his UFC debut to Clayton Carpenter, where unfortunately he was just taken down, he was beat up, and he was choked out. That ground game hole that I was talking about exposed. But there is still room to bounce back. Plenty of room, I should say. Like, he looks like he lost to a pretty capable guy. I think highly of Clayton Carpenter, and he's only 25 years old. But now we talk about Stuart Nickel, who is again, pretty simple to break down over here. He's a fighter who has a complete skill set, who is pretty dangerous when it comes to the first round. He excels on the ground, though. Like, he's way better at grappling. He has good entries. He has good ground and pound, but he lacks any experience against any sort of good competition, okay? He came to the UFC. He did okay with his control against Jesus Aguilar, but unfortunately ended up getting choked out in this bout. And for this fight, guys, I don't know what to think, man. I think this is probably one of the toughest fights to pick on the bout. Both guys are like Lucas Rocha. I know that he's 17-2. He definitely has more MMA experience, but there's really nothing to note besides like his last few performances over there. You know, I'm gonna pick Lucas Rocha to get the job done. I guess like Clayton Carpenter's a better loss to have. I think this one is just ridiculously tough to pick. I don't know what to think about it. Let's just see what the odds are over there. I'm gonna pick Lucas Rocha. Okay. Oh, there you go. There you go. I think anything can happen in that bout. Don't know what to make of it, so we're going to pick Lucas Rocha. But guys, let me stop you for just a second. As you might know, I like to talk a lot about betting on this channel. If you are interested in either supporting the channel or seeing what I'm doing with my own money, then you can check out the channel membership, which is very cheap compared to other channels. Every single Friday or Saturday morning, depending on whether or not I'd like to bet on any Friday fights. I am primarily a UFC bettor. You can check out the channel membership every single weekend. Again, Friday, Saturday morning. I'll be posting a community members video along with a members only post explaining what I am doing with my money, how many units I'm putting on, how confident I am in these bets, if I'm betting for value, anything like that. Typically, I'm a very safe bettor, but if you would like to combine my fight knowledge with your own research, either that or support the channel, then you can check out that channel membership, pinned comment, description down below, or right next to the subscribe button. Again, very cheap compared to anything else that you'll see. Additionally, the tool that we use on the channel over here at OddsJam is a partner of the channel. You can get a discount if you'd like to sign up to OddsJam, which is phenomenal if you play on multiple sportsbooks. My link, pinned comment, description down below, using code Clenbat. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. Let's get back into the main card over here. I'm excited to talk about some of these fights. We have a very fun fight to talk about opening up the main card over here, that being Vicente Luque taking on Joel Alvarez. This is a very, very good, a very, very fun fight over here. And we'll start by breaking down Vicente Luque over here, okay? We all know Vicente Luque at this point. He is a well-rounded, high-volume, technical fighter with a lot of cardio, heart, and chaos. He can typically contest with his opponents everywhere. He's like one of those complete skill sets kind of guys, but unfortunately, Vicente Luque is past his prime. He unfortunately hasn't been the same since, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was his brain bleed. I'm sorry if the facts there aren't exactly correct. He had something wrong with him that was kind of like a brain bleed, and since returning to the UFC, he hasn't been the same since. He's also had a lot of damage in his career. He's had a lot of wars, he's had a lot of tough fights, and he's almost 34 years old now. Body-wise, he is definitely past 34 years old in my opinion. Now, besides the performance against Themba Gorimbo where he found a submission right away inside the octagon there, he hasn't looked good at all since coming back. He did absolutely nothing against Joaquin Buckley, and he ended up getting beat up by Kevin Holland. I will say, though, his chin might not be as bad as we all thought it was a little while ago because he took some pretty good shots from Kevin Holland in their bout. And Holland, he has some nice, like, crispy, rangy power to him as well. We've seen Holland, like, really crack some guys, especially down there at 170. But let's talk about Joel Alvarez before we give a prediction over here. Joel Alvarez is a lengthy kickboxer and grappler who definitely prefers and excels at grappling. He can be taken down, and he's one of those guys that is okay with actually getting taken down, though. He's very active. He has great cardio. He has great heart. Now, unlike Vicente Luque, Joel has been extremely impressive in the vast majority of his bouts recently. Now, I wish the dude was more active. Like, I don't know why some of these guys take such long layoffs, especially if they're looking good. But anyways, the dude is a surging contender, and Vicente has another very, very tough bout in front of him over here. Now, I like Vicente Luque a lot. And compared to Joel Alvarez in his last fights that he's had, I know that he's been, again, he's had some high-level competition, like losing to Arman Tsarukyan 4 years ago. But in recent years, the Elvis Brenner win is probably the most impressive in my opinion. Vicente Luque is definitely the biggest name and definitely the toughest opponent that he's fought, but is the Vicente Luque of today the toughest opponent that Joel Alvarez has taken on? My gut reaction to that might be it might be Elvis Brenner. I'm ignoring Arman Tsarukyan, by the way. That was like so long ago. But I gotta go with Joel Alvarez here. I gotta go with him. At this point, I just don't trust Vicente Luque. I'd be talking a lot differently about this fight if this was a prime Vicente Luque, but I can't count on him to win anymore. I hope Vicente Luque gets a job done, but I would imagine that Joel Alvarez is just going to end up outworking him. Vicente Luque might be able to tough it out, but I'm gonna pick Joel Alvarez to get the job done. I think he's just gonna be a little bit better. But let's keep going up the card over here, guys. There's a few fights over here that unfortunately we don't have like too much to say about a couple fighters, but we'll break down Ricardo Ramos, we'll break down Con Offley. This is a little bit of a difficult card to like have like some very interesting fight talk about, eh? I've noticed that with a few fights that we've broken down over here. Luckily, we have very fun co-main event and main event to talk about, but we'll get there, okay? Let's start off with Ricardo Ramos over here. Now, Ricardo Ramos is one of those fighters who is pretty good in all aspects of MMA, doesn't really shine anywhere, but I would say the one thing that really stands out is that he uses his range well inside the octagon, especially when it comes to his kicks, and he does have sneaky good BJJ behind that. Unfortunately, he's been inconsistent in the UFC with a record of 17-7. He's never really had a standout performance, but he's shown to be of course, capable of winning fights. He's coming off of a really rough loss to Chepe Mariscal where he got obliterated in that fight, but I think that Chepe will be a top contender in no time, assuming that the guy actually fights, so I don't look too deeply into that fight, to be honest with you. Hopefully he comes back, hopefully he looks better. Con Offley, on the other hand, is a grappler with good control and dangerous submissions. He does have decent striking behind all of that too, but his strength is definitely in his grappling skill set. He's been winless in the UFC so far, but I would also like to mention with Con Offley that he took on both Marion Santos and Muhammad Naimov. Two fighters that are really tough outs for guys, okay? Against Santos, it was a pretty fun back and forth fight until he ended up getting caught, and against Naimov, unfortunately, he just ended up getting outworked, but he still did look pretty decent in that fight. I'm just saying, we can't count him out yet, even though he just hasn't won in the UFC yet. Again, the dude has had a pretty rough schedule here, okay? And I kind of want to pick him to win the fight, man, but I'm not gonna. Ricardo Ramos has better experience, and I know that he's coming off of that performance where he just looked horrible, but that was Chepe Mariscal looking good, and not Ricardo Ramos sucking. I think this is another really tough fight to pick, and I wish we had odds for this fight, but we don't. I'm going to pick Ricardo Ramos. Again, another low-confidence pick to get the job done. He's going to have more options. I think he's going to have more experience, but then again, Con Offley's taking on some tough guys. So it wouldn't shock me if he got the job done. Another fight that, in my opinion, you should not be betting on, but I'm going to pick Ricardo Ramos for this bout over here. Let's keep going up the card over here, guys. We have Lucas Almeida now taking on Michael Aswell. Another pretty fun fight, in my opinion. Another pretty fun fight, and again, good matchmaking by the UFC over here. Let's start with Lucas Almeida, okay? Lucas Almeida is a Muay Thai striker with good power and a ground game to back up that really good striking that he has. The only weakness that Lucas Almeida really has is that he can be hit a lot. Like the dude, he'll come out and he'll try to take your head off. His punches are powerful, fast, and crisp. And like we were just talking about with the last matchup, he's 15-4 in his career and also has had some very tough fights. Unfortunately, though, I wish that I could say that, like, oh my god, well, he went to war with this guy, but he's had his share of lackluster performances. But then again, if you look at, like, something like the fight against Timmy Kwamba that he had, he did look much better, being very dominant in that bout, but he's one of those guys that I think we kind of know at this point where he fits into everything at this point in his career. He's a good fighter, but I think that he'll just kind of, like, remain around the level that he's at inside the octagon now. But let's also talk about the Texas kid, Michael Aswell. He is a decently well-rounded fighter with a ton of heart and pretty good scrappy tendencies. He's coming off of his UFC debut loss to Balaji Oki, where obviously he did lose that fight, but it was still a good performance. Honestly, though, with Michael Aswell, there's really not much to say. He's 10-3 now. He's still got room to showcase his skill set inside the UFC. He's only 25 years old as well. And oh, I'm sorry about that. I think I just hit the wrong OBS scene over there. Sorry about that. I'm going to go another really tough one. I'm going to go with Michael Aswell. I don't like the losses that Lucas Almeida's had. I know that he's gotten a win in recent times, but I think that Michael Aswell has a little bit more to show. Another really low confidence pick, though, man. Another really low confidence pick. Yeah, he's well-rounded. Yeah, he could probably get the job done, Michael Aswell. It's going to be tough to bet on this card, honestly. Let's see what the odds are for this fight, okay? Michael Aswell sitting at a small favorite over here compared to Lucas Almeida. Again, I don't think that you should be betting on this one, guys, but at least with these next fights, it's going to be way more interesting to break down. I'm not going to lie, guys. Hopefully the video is still a little bit interesting, but there's been a few fights here where it's like, you know what? Both these guys are okay. They're not really shown too much. I'm more excited for a couple early prelims over here. But before we get into those last few fights, guys, let me stop you for just one more second. As you might know, I am your guy with too many YouTube channels. We make daily commentaries on multiple channels, so if you are interested, you happen to like me as a creator, you happen to like my commentary, check out the link tree at the top of the description or the description down below. You can find direct links to all my channels. Again, we upload daily commentaries, and we have been seeing a little bit of bleed over, which has been nice to see. A couple of you guys been popping into Fortnite streams and things like that, which it makes my day, man. Always love to see MMA fans, especially since MMA, the MMA channel over here, it's my biggest passion. I love talking about fights, so if you're interested in anything else that I do, like movie content, anything under the sun, we're trying to dip our toes into a lot of niches. Then check out the link tree. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Let's get into these last few cards in the featured bout. And for that featured bout, we have Jonathan Diniz taking on Mario Pinto. This is a very, very fun fight that's, in my opinion, going to deliver. Let's break this fight down, okay? We'll start with Jonathan Diniz over here. And Jonathan Diniz is a kickboxer who excels at pure technical kickboxing, okay? He has a really good jab. He has really good leg kicks. When the fight is left to striking, the dude thrives. I also love that he typically, like, sticks to what works. Like, if Jonathan Diniz is having success with a calf kick, he'll keep at it. If the hook is working, he'll keep throwing that. Like, you know, like those types of fighters. Now, unfortunately, Jonathan Diniz does have a little bit of a hole in his ground game. If he gets taken down, he has no intent to stand up or fight off submissions, and he can fade as fights go on a little bit. And that hole that I was just talking about just got shown recently against Marcin Tybura, where he looked really bad once the fight ended up hitting the mat. Other than that, though, he's just been a very good heavyweight kickboxer. Nothing like insanely impressive inside the octagon, but he's had some good performances. He is exiting his prime now, and he's still green in his MMA career. He's been looking good. I think we kind of know where he fits in here, okay? Mario Pinto, on the other hand, is very exciting. He is a technical stand-up fighter who tries to pick his opponent's part with precise and powerful strikes. He is capable of submissions, but the dude's definitely a striker, okay? My only problem with Mario is that we still do have, well, I mean, it's not really a problem, but we still have questions about his hard cardio and his level of grappling. He hasn't really been tested at any high level, or hasn't been tested in any, like, really, really hard 3-round fights. You know what I mean? But with Mario Pinto, guys, there isn't, like, much to break down. He comes in, he finishes people. He's been looking like a killer. He's not even in his prime yet. He's 10-0, finally taking on his first test, and I'm excited to see how he ends up looking inside the octagon here. And this is one of those heavyweight bouts where it's like, okay, these two can swing. And again, it's a tough fight to pick because anything can happen. I'm going to pick Jonathan Diniz because this is going to be a stand-up fight. And if Jonathan Diniz can kind of slow it down and just work with the, you know, the jab, hook, calf kicks, and just keep this a technical match, I think that he can out-technique Mario Pinto, but, dude, Mario Pinto's very precise himself. Mario Pinto can definitely knock out Junata Diniz, but, yeah, because I still have questions about, like, what happens when these guys go 3 rounds. I know Junata Diniz will slow down, but we haven't really seen, like, anything like that from Mario Pinto yet. I think it's safer to pick Junata Diniz. I'm going to pick Junata Diniz. Reluctantly, again. Very, very tough fights this card, guys, but there's a couple spots that I do see betting opportunities in, so stay tuned for that, okay? Another pick'em fight over here. And it's understandably so. Understandably so. Mario Pinto minus 123 average odds and Junata Diniz minus 103 odds. This is a very, very difficult card to break down and predict, guys. But again, Junata Diniz is going to be my pick for this bout. All right, guys, let's get into the very, very exciting co-main event over here. Deiveson Figueiredo taking on Montel Jackson. Again, excellent matchmaking by the UFC. I am very, very excited for this bout. We'll start by breaking down Deiveson Figueiredo, who is a very complete fighter who excels at fast-paced, chaotic fights where he just looks to come in, use his presence, and knock you clean out. He has good fight IQ. He does a good job adjusting game plans mid-fight if if he needs to in that fight. Now, the only problem is, and I've been talking about this since he moved up to 135, since he made the move, he kind of lacks that danger aspect he's shown throughout his career. He's almost 38 years old right now. I think that he's exited his prime. He's recently taken 2 really rough losses to both Petr Yan and Corey Sandhagen, who both of them are incredible fighters, some of the best in the world, but he wasn't all of that competitive in those bouts, unfortunately, especially in his most recent bout with Corey Sandhagen. That's kind of like why I feel he's past his prime, because I think a younger version, a champion like Deiveson Figueiredo when he was like champion, younger versions of him would have performed a bit better. When he's on, though, he is absolutely one of the best fighters in the world. I just worry that we might not see that guy again, unfortunately. Oh, and there was one more thing I wanted to mention. If you're a betting man talking about this fight over here, you might want to be careful about how you handle Deiveson Figueiredo, because he took a really rough knee injury in his most recent bout, talking about that Corey Sandhagen fight. I personally haven't heard anything about it, but obviously it's healed up if he's taking another fight here. But you always have to worry about fighters maybe like being weak to any low kicks or something along those lines, hesitant to use the leg. Maybe we could see him like overreact any kicks thrown his way. And of course you have to worry about like that same injury lighting up. It's just something to keep in mind. I'm not saying that it's like gonna happen or anything like that. Just be careful if you're somebody who likes to bet on UFC, is thinking about Deiveson Figueiredo. I would imagine he's the underdog here, maybe an underdog opportunity. But let's talk about Montel Jackson. He's a big striker, lots of power in his hands, and he can be very dangerous inside the octagon. He has really nice, crisp, straight shots, along with a wrestling base to back that up. He has been on an absolute roll in the UFC, and a lot of people are predicting this guy to have a bright future inside the UFC bantamweight division, and I can certainly see that, okay? Especially with passing the test that he's just had inside that octagon. He knocked out Damon Blackshear, which is incredible. I just wish that we could have seen a little bit more of a fight there, because like, see if he could dominate, Damon Blackshear, which would have looked even better. But regardless, the knockout was insanely good, okay? He then ended up beating Daniel Marcos in a very fun, very close fight. Marcos is also a talented fighter himself. So he passed those 2 tests, and he's making yet another jump up in competition here. So I'm really excited to see how he performs. Montel Jackson is still in his prime, and he has been on a tear in this division, and I cannot wait to see what he does in this bout over here. Now, if this was a prime Deiveson Figueiredo that we were talking about, I'd be very confident that he could get the job done. I think that he would eat the shots and Montel Jackson would end up throwing, and I would imagine that he would have a little bit more of a diverse skill set to get the job done. But I think that we've seen the best of Deiveson Figueiredo. It's very tough for somebody, Deiveson Figueiredo, with a lot of miles on his body, a lot of wars, a lot of 5-round wars over here, coming into the octagon off of an injury. That's a little bit of a red flag for me. Deiveson Figueiredo is one of my favorite fighters. I hope he gets the job done. I'll be sitting down, I'll be cheering for Deiveson Figueiredo. But I'm going to pick Montel Jackson. He's going to have the range advantage. He uses that range well. He's going to be clipping Deiveson Figueiredo. I'd be surprised if Deiveson Figueiredo went out, but I think I have to pick the surging contender over here. But then again, he could get shown that there's levels to this game with Deiveson Figueiredo. It's a tough pick, but I'm going to pick Montel Jackson. Again, not going to bet on that, though. Let's see what the odds are. I'm very interested in this one, okay? Montel Jackson said, I didn't expect him to be this big of a favorite. Minus 290. Yeah, it seems like things are just kind of aligning for Montel Jackson to get the job done over here, eh? It's going to be sad. I want Deiveson Figueiredo to win. Again, he's one of my favorite fighters. I hope he wins. But every fighter has his best days, right? Every fighter gets old. Father Time undefeated. I could be wrong about that. I don't really think I am. But now, guys, let's talk about the main event of the evening. Charles Oliveira versus Mateusz Gamrot. We all know that this is supposed to be Jafel taking on Charles Oliveira, but Mateusz Gamrot answered the call. He's here after a little bit of back and forth from Charles Oliveira, but I'm excited about this. Let's break down these two fighters here, okay? Let's break down these two fighters, starting with Charles Oliveira, okay? Charles Oliveira, he is a very complete fighter with dangerous Muay Thai striking and one of the best BJJ games in MMA. If I'm not mistaken, he has the most submission wins in UFC history, too. He's very technical in all aspects of MMA. He has all the experience in the world. He has cardio, heart, chin, pressure. The guy can do everything at a high level except like straight up high level wrestling, okay? About his heart, though, we always have to talk about this because everybody talks about this. In the past, Charles Oliveira has had heart issues in the octagon, but in recent years that has been fixed, okay? You can knock this guy down all you want, and he will come back with more danger than he's ever had before, unless you're Ilia Topuria. Unfortunately, though, I think that Charles Oliveira is past his prime, but the dude is still an incredible fighter. As we know, and as I just mentioned, he's coming off of that clean KO loss to Ilia Topuria, where there's no shame in losing that fight, but you always have to worry about how somebody's going to bounce back after being chinned like that. Thankfully for Charles, Mateusz Gamrot has no power in his hands, but you never know. After getting clocked like that, you never know, okay? Other than that, in his recent career after losing the title, it's been like win-loss, win-loss. And earlier, how I mentioned, earlier I mentioned how I believe Charles to be out of his prime. I say that because of his recent two performances inside the octagon. He's almost 36 years old now with a ton of miles on his body on top of that. But in the rematch with Michael Chandler, he dominated, okay? He just wasn't that killer that we've known him to be. But like I said, he's still incredible. I just think that he's slowing down inside the octagon here. And of course, like, again, in that last fight against Ilia Topuria, he ended up getting knocked out. Last thing I believe we need to talk about is how bad he did not want to take Mateusz Gamrot over here. I have no idea what that was all about, but he said it was like a different style compared to what he was training for, which it's true, but it makes you wonder if there's something that he's worried about. Excuse me if you can hear my notification. It's just red flags all around with that situation, okay? Maybe he doesn't want to get wrestled like Islam Makhachev. I don't know, but let's break down Mateusz Gamrot, okay? He is a very well-rounded fighter himself, but the goal with Mateusz Gamrot is to always come out and always grapple. He's incredible at control, transitions, submission threats. On the feet, he's actually very sneaky, and he does he's underrated on the feet in general. He fights very safe and does a good job sticking to game plans. The only big problem with Gamrot is that he can get rocked, and if he does get rocked in the octagon, he'll change the entire fight, okay? He'll be tentative, and he'll potentially end up losing the belt. And that happening is very possible against Charles Oliveira, okay? But the dude, he's 25-3. He's had an incredible UFC run. In recent times, he's only lost to Dan Hooker, which at the time was very surprising to me, but in hindsight, I should have seen, like, how much of a dog Dan would have been in that fight against Mateusz Gamrot. But he's coming off of a really great smothering win against Ludwig Klein, and before that fight that he had with Hooker where he lost, he was like looking great against great guys. Mateusz Gamrot is just exiting his prime here, but he hasn't been slowing down. He has a great mindset for the game. He has a lot of great experience with great fighters. Lastly, as we all know, he did take this fight on very short notice. We won't know how good his conditioning is, and especially if the fight happens to be 5 rounds. We don't know any of that. I guess we'll have to wait for some interviews to come out. If there are any out, I haven't seen any. It's just something that we have to worry about. And this is another difficult fight to predict, man. I don't see Charles Oliveira submitting Mateusz Gamrot because I see a world where Charles Oliveira rocks Mateusz Gamrot on the feet because Mateusz doesn't really have that danger that Charles will really have to worry about. I don't think that we have to worry about Charles Oliveira like getting knocked out again fighting Gamrot. If Gamrot had a full training camp, I'd pick him to win. Will he be able to hold Charles Oliveira down? And if he takes Charles Oliveira down, he has to worry about the submissions. Oliveira is phenomenal at what he does. I also, for some reason, it's putting a red flag where Charles Oliveira did not want to take this fight against Mateusz Gamrot. I don't know. My gut's telling me to pick Gamrot in this bout. My gut's telling me to. And what if Charles Oliveira shows up and looks a little bit more washed? Like, he just got, how long was it since Ilia Topuria? 2 months ago, he just got knocked out. I think it might be a little bit too early to come back. I don't know. I'm going to go with my gut over here. I'm going to take Mateusz Gamrot. I worry about 5 rounds, but even then, Charles Oliveira didn't go crazy for 5 rounds against Michael Chandler. We'll see how it plays out. Let's see what the odds are. I'm going to pick Gamrot to get the job done. And honestly, dude, I hope Gamrot wins. I love Charles Oliveira, been a fan of his for a very long time in the vast majority of his UFC career, but I'm so sick and tired of fighters being inactive and being entitled I hate that, and Gamrot just erases that whole attitude. Like I was just talking about my previous video with Ian Gary, I just find myself always cheering for him because it's like, he'll fight, he'll say yes, he doesn't care, he's not entitled. Gamrot's not that guy either. I'm not saying like Charles Oliveira, he's shown a little bit of it, but I hope Gamrot wins. We need that guy as champion, okay? If the odds are to pick him again. How many times have we talked about like a pick 'em odds of this card? Very, very tough. I can see this one going back and forth. Let's see. Over 2.5 at minus 133. That's not bad. You have two really, really tough fighters. I want to see what a 1.5 line is. If 2.5 is at minus 133, do not hate that one little bit. I like that. I hope Gamrot wins. I'm going to reluctantly pick Gamrot. It's a very, very difficult fight. But in the meantime, if you guys want to watch a video where I ranked every single MMA content creator in 2025, you can check out this video on screen right now. I'd love to have you guys over there. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, everybody.